A workshop meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. We are live in the second floor Commissioners Room at City Hall. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 9:03 a.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll start off with roll call. Commissioner Mark Saunders.
Present.
Commissioner Suzanne Good.
Present.
Commissioner Edward Shanowski.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Bunky Markert.
Here.
Commissioner Craig Thier.
Here.
And Mayor Stan Mills. We have a full complement of the mayor and commissioners. Therefore, we have a quorum and can formally conduct business today. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to identify some of the staff that's here. We've got City Secretary Ann Womack. Raise your hand there. City Manager Taylor Tedder. New City Solicitor Lisa Boren Ogden on my right. We've got Assistant City Manager Evan Miller. Lynn Cohen, Communications Director in the back corner. And I think that has everybody. Henry Matlos. Do you want to introduce Gwen?
I'll do that.
Oh, you'll do that later, okay, during your thing. And with that, we'll move right on to my thank you to all those that are watching virtually, and thank you for those that are in person. Reminder that you will have the opportunity to provide feedback and comment, and the rules for that are articulated at the bottom of this agenda. Also, you'll notice embedded in the agenda are what we call support documents. They are documents which support our individual agenda topics. They are embedded whenever we receive them in sufficient time ahead of the meeting to be able to embed them. There we go. Next is correspondence. You notice we have two pieces of mail. They both have to do with the dark sky topic, and we will bring those up later. With that, we'll move right on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, members of the public and city staff and commissioners. First, I'd like to give an update on the canal dock. Wallace Montgomery conducted an initial survey, which included 9 points of the canal dock embankment on May 27th. Wallace Montgomery, along with the soils engineering firm Stable Ground In Situ, will undertake an additional survey at the end of June before consideration is given to the reopening of the canal dock. So unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit more time than we had anticipated. PFAS. The EPA has delayed implementation of PFAS limits until 2031. The city's PFAS mitigation system is currently in the design phase, and the intent is to continue with the design and implementation as scheduled, but of course we can bring that back at a later date. The 2025 Consumer Confidence Report, or Annual Water Quality Report, has been published and is available on the city's website. I'm pleased to report that overall Rehoboth Water exceeds required drinking water standards. Notification about the report's availability is being mailed to all water customers. Also, another informational postcard will be going out to water customers, and it requests that customers use alternating days for irrigation and to limit the duration of watering. I'll be reaching out to the Dewey Beach City Manager to also ask that their town does the same thing. ClearSpace. Last week, I sent a letter to the ClearSpace Theater Company Board of Directors to further communicate the city's willingness and support to explore the public-private partnership. City staff has continued to meet and discuss logistics with ClearSpace staff and remain available to further look at how we can retain the live theater and arts-based learning center offerings in the city of Rehoboth Beach. The city's popular summer recreational programs begin today. Arts and crafts activities for children ages 2 through 12 are offered 9 a.m. Mondays and Wednesdays at Grove Park through August 20th. Other programs include a walking and jogging club, storytime yoga, magic shows, and face painting will also be offered on other days of the week during the summer. Visit the summer programs page at rehobothbeachde.gov for a full schedule. And of course, all of the programs are free. We do have some new faces in the audience. The city would like to welcome 3 new faces that are in the audience. So first is Gwyneth Southard. She started last week and will be an intern with the Public Works Department if you want to wave your hand. Gwen's a senior civil engineering student at the University of Delaware, so welcome, Gwen. So we have 2 others. Jillian Klimas, she's an undergraduate with the public policy, through University of Delaware's Biden School of Public Administration. And she and Raymond Kalmanowitz are both over there. They're here with the city as part of the Summer Management Fellowship Program through the Biden School. So welcome, both of you. Thanks for being here. And that concludes my report, but I'm here for any questions you may have.
Any questions of City Manager, Commissioner Saunders?
Yes, Mr. Tedder, I just wanted clarification on the dock. Are we going ahead with getting estimates on getting the ballast, if you will, that they had talked about putting at the bottom at the toe?
Right, so that's part of what Wallace Montgomery and the engineering firm are contemplating, but also doing the monitoring.
Right. I'm just thinking if we find out that it is still moving, that may stop it from moving, we're hoping.
Right, right.
Mayor,
Commissioner Good?
thank you. It's disappointing, I think, to all of us that the May 27th assessment, which we were told would
Speak for yourself, Commissioner.
yield
Speak
a
for yourself.
definitive. Okay, I would respectfully like you to let me finish. It makes it harder for me to convey the message.
Makes it harder for us to listen to it when you convey the messages from all of us.
I'm asking for support from my colleagues for something on June 20th or shortly thereafter. It's disappointing to me, as I was saying, that the May 27th assessment, which was carried out, for which we paid, did not yield what I thought would be more definitive results. Having said that, Mr. Matlos, I defer to him and his expertise that we need an additional assessment. I've been told that will be at the end of June to figure out how much additional centimeters or inches that the retaining wall has slipped or cracked. However, I have been requesting of Mr. Tedder, and this was actually in the presence of the new in-house counsel, that the city, based on the 2020 to 2021 landscape architecture with Thompson and Sons as the subcontractor who built that faulty retaining wall, that we sue the insurance carrier because unfortunately, apparently, Landscape Architects has disbanded and no longer exists. However, they had an insurance carrier at the time. So I'd like this to be a priority because there's nothing in the 2020 specs that even mentions that they have to be exceedingly careful about preserving that embankment because 2 very important infrastructure pipes lie just to the east of it. That is our entire ocean outfall pipe, which carries up to about almost 4 million gallons a day in July to the outfall off Deauville Beach, and a wastewater pipe bringing untreated wastewater from Henlopen Acres all the way to our plant to then actually join up with ocean outfall pipe eventually. So we have a big problem. I believe they wanted the $1.3 million. Money was on the table, and there was not a lot of due diligence given to whether this was an appropriate location for a canal boat dock. And I hope my colleagues will do some research in the next, week or so that on June 20th or shortly thereafter, we now have an in-house counsel, and I want her to bring this suit. I don't want to hire outside counsel to do it. I think that's the reason we hired someone in-house, was to stop relying on outside counsel so much. So I hope that will that will come to pass. I personally, and my husband, I need to announce that because our son is graduating from 5 years of surgical residency on Friday, June 20th, I will not be present at the June 20th meeting. I actually informed the mayor of this and Mr. Tedder of this back in December when we learned that his residency program to form surgeons, the graduation would be June 20th in southwestern Virginia at 7 p.m. So thank you, and I will be emailing additional information as I obtain it about landscape architectures, but I hope Ms. Boren Ogden will be the lead on that.
Anybody else? Commissioner Thayer?
Yes, I'll start with the dock. What's the status of the constructability study? And just to kind of be clear so everyone understands what the constructability study is for those who missed prior meetings, the constructability study is to determine whether the methods or either the methods of construction or the materials used in construction were appropriate, and appropriate is kind of a loose term, but we're trying to find out whether this was or was not built correctly.
I'll have Henry Matlos talk on this. Thank you.
Sure. Commissioner, in discussion with a few firms, and this would be something that the commissioners would have to decide to proceed with or not, a full constructability study would run anywhere from probably $50,000 to $100,000. Like you said, it determines it's a very deep dive, both into the into the plans, into the construction, and you would have to do quite a bit of additional borings, which would probably be like removing sidewalks in order to take borings in different areas. So it's something that can be brought up in future meetings to decide if that's something that the commissioners would like to do. But again, it'd be at least $50,000.
So, I mean, I guess I'm going to be clear at this point, which is that I'm not going to agree to spend another dime on this without a constructability study. I'm going to go back to what Commissioner Good said. I'm probably doing this in a little bit more of a step fashion, but if we find out that there were problems, either the methods or the materials weren't appropriate, I'm with Commissioner Good, right? We need to be pursuing litigation against whoever is out there that we can. That's one. Two, I'm not interested. You put, $400,000 proposal in front of us last month to, basically try and manage this thing, right, from not slipping into the creek. Since then, and at that time, you told us it was going to be open before Memorial Day. You said it with a lot of confidence it's going to be open before Memorial Day. We'll get Wallace Montgomery in here. They'll do this simple study. We'll open it. We now know since then there's been further slippage. So again, I'm sitting here as a reasonable person. I'm not an engineer. We're 4 years into this thing, probably not even 4 years into this thing, and it's fallen into the creek. Okay, we got to find out whether this thing was built correctly or not. And I'm telling you right now, I will not agree to spend another dime on this until I see that constructability study. So just kind of leave that with you. You can decide. I'm disappointed that the response I get today is, oh, maybe we'll bring it back in a few months if you want to see it. Okay, a little frustrating. So I'm putting it back in your court. You can kind of decide how you want to move forward. But until I see that, I'm not agreeing to spend another dime on this.
Look, I've been a little
Growth
lax
doc.
on this. This is not on the agenda, and we were going a little too far. If we wanted on an agenda to talk continued about this or further about it, then we need to put it on an agenda.
Yeah, it sounds like we will. So.
Oh, Mayor, one clarification, please. From
Commissioner Good?
Mr. Matlos, is that report that you anticipated last week would be available this morning from Wallace Montgomery? Do you have it in hand from their May 27th, assessment?
No, I don't. I do not have it at hand. I will contact them this morning. I was out for a few days last week.
Right, right, I know.
And,
Okay,
you know,
so
that was
no
based
problem.
on a verbal discussion with Dave Labella, who is the gentleman that presented last month. So,
But just for the timeline, to confirm what you had told me, at the end of June or the very beginning of July, you have contracted with them to do a follow-up assessment on a smaller scale?
right, right. They will do those 9 points that they selected. They will survey those points and can determine, you know, how much, if any, it has slipped since then.
I guess, Mr. Tedder, I think we need to be in agreement that after that assessment, let's call it June 30th, July 1st, whatever it'll be, no more money be spent until we reach some agreement with consultation with Mr. Matlos of what the, you know, the best course forward should be.
As I mentioned earlier, this is not on the agenda. We've said it would be on the agenda, and therefore I'm cutting off conversation of this.
But we keep hiring
I am
consultants
cutting off-
without any
I am-
agreement.
Suzanne, I'm cutting off conversation. What don't you understand about that? Can you tell me? It will be on a future agenda. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, couple other questions for the city manager, not related to the dock.
Not related
Yeah, absolutely.
and short, because if they need
Absolutely.
to be long, they need to be.
Clear space. Have they provided you with a design of the building?
No, I've seen some general concept pictures, but that's it.
Okay. So I've met with, you know, Joe Fowler as well as a few of the ClearSpace board members, and that is one of the things that I've really impressed upon them is the need for them to provide us a detailed design. It's very difficult, at least for myself, to have any further conversations without knowing what it is they actually want to build. And I know the residents want to know what they want to build as well. So again, you know, to the extent you have or have not, I just ask you to continue to emphasize that with ClearSpace.
Sure.
Last was PFAS. I appreciate you coming up with the 2031, the new deadline of 2031. That's something I've been looking for. I did have a few residents reach out to me about PFAS. I think given we have a couple additional years here, you know, we're probably going to have to do this in one form or fashion, but I think it's probably time to present a plan, some level of detail on this project, because it is $4 million over 3 years. And when I say details, you know, break it down into, you know, how much is design going to be, how much are the materials going to be, how much is construction going to be, and kind of general timing of that. So I'd appreciate it if you could do that for us.
Certainly.
That's all I got, Mayor. Thank you.
Anybody else? With that, we'll move on to city solicitor's report. Anything? You could say no.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just very happy to be here, and I will move forward. Thank you very much, Mayor. I am very happy to be here, and I will pass on any report for the moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With that, there is no old business. We'll move on to new business. Item A is discuss a revised priority list for city code amendments. Corey? You would explain what this is to the layperson, if you will, that's just looking in on it.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Corey Shinko, Interim Director for Building and Licensing. It's very nice to be back up here not talking about basements for once. I have the screen pulled up on this computer. I'm hoping I can have the display for everyone. So before I go into this PowerPoint presentation, a few months ago, I believe most recently in March, Building and Licensing came up and presented a code priorities list, and that was based off of something that the city did back in 2020. We completely changed that approach for a few reasons, and I'll go into those with this presentation. But this is, in general, about a 6.5-year timeline, and that's rather ambitious. We looked at all of the code sections from Rehoboth Beach Municipal Code that building and licensing has either a critical role or the majority a majority role in, to look at what we could do and how we would prioritize those sections of code to have a much more comprehensive look. This doesn't quite go into particular details. I really just wanted to get this in front of you today so I could share why we organized it the way we did, and if you had any concerns or you want to modify or change the order, then we could talk about that today as an initial workshop. I'm going to stay out of the PowerPoint so I can zoom in. Oh, this is the communications plan. Bear with me, everyone. I apologize. Okay. So this was the original list in 2020. The reason we did away with this list is because it's very narrow and small in scope. And quite frankly, the things that it addresses, I'm going to talk about return on investment. It's not worth the time right now for the city to expend resources in fixing these small code sections. While we will get to them, there's other things that we want to focus on first. So Rehoboth Beach codes are broken up into two main categories. If you go online to our e-codes, you'll find two that you can choose from before you go in depth to them. Administrative legislation and general legislation. This list focuses almost exclusively in general legislation. There might be one or two little crossovers when it comes to code enforcement and violations and penalties, but that's very, very narrow. Building and Licensing has compiled a revised draft of code priority updates that pertain to this department. So the methodology is really just what resources will we pour into this, and what can we expect to get back, and how will we prioritize for a high return. Code updates will require an investment of staff hours, legal review, public outreach, mayor and commissioner meeting times, and possible consulting work. I planning on doing the absolute minimum if necessary. We have wonderful resources in Rehoboth Beach. People in this community are very intelligent. They are very active. We've got a great staff here in City Hall, and I believe that we can get most of this work done in-house with everyone here who lives here, who knows the codes, and who will be affected by this. I also think that even if we were to hire an outside consulting firm, they wouldn't get this done any faster. They're still going to have to do the same steps as we would have to do. So what code priorities will result in a high return on investment? It's codes that are going to save the city time and money. If we look over the past 10 years, what has cost the city money, what has cost the city lots of time, let's start there and fix those if those came about from code issues. If we create codes that create a streamlined process with greater clarity of standards, downstream from that, we'll save, that's where we'll get the return. Ambiguous, ill-defined, unaddressed, poorly written, and conflicting codes create undesirable outcomes. So we want to triage that based off of how badly these types of codes affect the body of the government. There's two timetables that this is broken down into. Codes are going to be much faster if they're not in the zoning chapter, because those don't require public hearings. So for codes that don't require that, we're estimating 5 to 9 months. And even with that, that's ambitious. Some of the codes may take a little bit longer, but on average, I think that we can get these sections of codes that are not zoning within this 5 to 9 months per chapter. That's going to include 2 to 3 months of internal research from city staff, boards and commissions, and other departments. Another month or 2 for a public outreach. That could be different associations in Rehoboth Beach or other stakeholders. 1 to 2 months for legal review, and another month or 2 for final considerations, comments from commissioners here, and final legislative action. It's going to be a similar process, but for revisions per zoning article that we can move through. Again, it's going to be another 2 to 3 months for internal research, 1 to 3 months for public outreach. Some of these, if we start really getting into floor area ratio, use regulations, they could take considerably longer. We'll need legal review prior to an initial consideration. That's when we would first bring it to you for consideration. To get your comments, we'd have to then adopt a resolution to hold a public hearing, another legal consideration to draft any ordinances, and then holding the public hearings and ultimate legislation. 7 to 13 months per article, I believe that's ambitious. Again, the basements took about 30 months. So I think that if we do a little bit more public outreach and we can come together with the public on some of these topics, then we can have there can be a united front, at least with the amount of people that we reach and getting everyone involved, keeping communication lines open. I think that will help get some of this through faster than what it took for basements. So this is a timeline, and I'll zoom in, but before I do, the top portion of it is non-zoning chapters, and the bottom portion is the zoning articles. They're chapters, but we call them articles. We're right here in the middle of 2025, and the first one that I want to prioritize is the Chapter 236. I've had some great conversations already with members of the Planning Commission. It's already on the docket for June 26th for us to begin at least an introduction to revisions to 236. That's not a zoning chapter. We're not going to touch anything in zoning, although it does reference that, but that is one of the first chapters I feel that needs some clarifications and other things. That will work in conjunction with, right down below, Board of Adjustment. We're getting into zoning here, but if we can work through Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment first, those are the very large projects. There are projects that I think with more clear language, better defined expiration dates of final decisions. We can look at the definitions, we can look at fee structures, and we can look at the processes. Then any large projects that come in that involve Board of Adjustments and Planning Commissions will have a great operating procedure that people can work through. They know what's expected of them, and we will have a better defined path forward for these large projects that involve lots of money, and it should hopefully save us months, if not years, for these long projects, and again, time and money. Also below that is things, the amendment procedure and conflicts and effective date, as well as administration and enforcement. These 3 chapters are going to be running with the Board of Adjustment as we need to clear up certain items from a broad perspective on, if you look at any type of, I'll use the International Code Council. Most of these books start with scope and administration first. What's the scope? What are the powers that are vested for it? Board of Adjustment is one of that, and the Office of the Building Inspector is the other one. Those 2 are governed by, they have the scope of the power in the zoning code per Chapter 270, along with Planning Commission in 236. So we want to work with the scope and administration first, get with the conflicts and effective date and the amendment procedure to look at those. And once we have those worked out in the beginning, then we can move on to the other portions, which would be next in the zoning code of what I really feel that is going to take probably longer than this, is use regulations, height, density, area, building setbacks, and many other codes that live in this area here. I'll stick in zoning. Once we work through this is in 2028. Again, this is still just my best guesstimate here. It may be further along. We can look at parking, loading and unloading berths, and special provisions. After that, now that we would have revised or amended or clarified all these portions of code, then we can revise the nonconformity article of our zoning code to match that, because there may be some things that are now non-conforming if we go through these amendments, and so we can look at that afterwards to clear that up. And then the sign article for all of the signs in Rehoboth. And then to finally clear it up is the general provisions. This is where all of the definitions are included. And it's going to be kind of a conclusion of the zoning chapter. I didn't want for us to go into the definitions first, because it'd be kind of looking into we wouldn't know exactly where we'd want to look other than just definitions. So if we can work on all these other sections first, the definitions of all of the terms will be expressed the way that we intend to per article that we go through. And then this last one, we can clear up any of the outliers or the remainders that might not have been looked at for clarity. So that's the zoning code. Up top here is some small codes that I think that we can take care of easily. House numbers and housing standards can be done very quickly, very soon. We can take care of that and update things for within the next 3 to 4 months. Trees is up top here. I'm going to have to work. We'll have to work with the arborist and see that availability that can move. But we want to work out. We've had some growing pains with the new tree code, so we want to just tweak a couple sections of that to make that run more clearly and have less conflicting issues that we see. One of the things that can't be moved is this section here between, this is starting June, July of next year, moving through early 2027, where this department will completely update our I-codes and adopt the new 2027 code cycle. We'll also look at the flood damage reduction chapter as well as residential rentals, because all that will be tied into the new building codes that we'll amend. One important conversation we'll have to have as a city at that point is, do we want to adopt residential sprinklers or not? There'll be a couple other things, but that'll be one of the big ones that we'll have to talk about next year, next summer into next fall. And the goal is to have all of that brought online with the city to adopt it shortly after 2027, and we can keep with those codes until 2034, which is good for us. After we get through that we have to get through, we'll take a look at civil offenses. Again, these chapters we can get through a little bit more quickly. We don't need the public hearing. These are chapters that are really just how the city will function, not relating to zoning. And we'll look at here cleaning up a lot of the different penalties and violation sections in different chapters, as well as this is chapter 126 of our municipal code that is cited in almost every portion of our code. And we will be working with police as well as the alderman court and of course legal to take a little bit of a closer look at this section. After this, we will look at businesses and pools to see what needs to be cleared up, any language that needs to be brought into today's language as far as how these businesses are defined, and we can take a look at what types of businesses require licenses, and what those requirements are to get those licenses. And I know that Evan Miller and the city manager's office has been looking at fees, but this would be looking at what types of businesses that we have here in town and how we can clarify some of those issues with how they're defined and with pools. And that is pretty much that takes us to 2032. Again, this is ambitious, but we want to start somewhere. And below here to kind of keep us on track, we have a Gantt chart. This is just a static picture of it. This is a dynamic chart. It is done by quarters. So we have our fiscal year, and it allows us to keep track. We can add to and move around all these different things in here, which start date, the end date. It tracks the status. And so every month, if you'd like, or every other month, we can come back and give you an update on how these code revisions are going. And what if we finished, you know, we can track that as well. And below here, we can add to any other codes. So hopefully we'll keep building and licensing. We'll bring this back to you every so often to keep you updated. And that's the presentation.
I think you've done a lot more work than I thought. It looks great. I can't imagine you expected us to actually read some of that fine print. I even Xeroxed and enlarged it 200%. I still can't read the darn thing. But anyhow, I'm fine with the program. It looks like you consulted with the Planning Commission a little bit at the beginning. So again, I'm fine with all that. Are there any comments by the commissioners up here?
Mayor?
Before I go to the members of the public, Commissioner Saunders?
I just want to say I'm very happy that you're doing it in-house. I think that's absolutely proper and the correct way to do it. Thank you.
Commissioner Markert?
I'm just trying to establish, I mean, obviously, certain sections are dependent on other sections and so forth, but I'm just trying to, and the way you've thought about this and organizing in terms of your own prioritization, is any of this, do you envision that we will at some point be able to make decisions along the way that we can basically change portions of the code at that time and then move forward to continue? Or do you want to look at this as like wrapping the whole thing up in one giant bow at the end? Or like, I'm just trying to figure out like how you see this working, or is that too hard to predict at this point?
Well, right now, if I'm going to try to stay on the Gantt chart as best as I can, what we want to do is work this, if we keep this as the standard, and again, we can move things around, we can move things up and down based off of the start date, but once we start something, I would like to work on that until we see it through. So if we take the first couple, numbering of buildings and housing standards, these ones should be very quick. They're going to be very easy to do. The subdivision of land site plan review for the Planning Commission, that will take a little bit longer. We're hoping to have that done by December, but once we get that done, we'd like to bring it before you for adoption for that code revision, and then that's going to fall in line about halfway through, so that when we work on not the trees here, but the Board of Adjustment here, that's going to we'll have more. We'll know what we're doing more with the Planning Commission's chapters, but we would like to work on that all the way through, and then once we're done with that, we'll present it to you in that time frame. Either if it's not a zoning chapter, then we can present it, and you can either make a motion or do what you need to do to either vote the next meeting, or I'm not sure how. We'll work with legal to see how the votes go, but we would like to get it done as we're working through it.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
Mayor,
Commissioner Gossett?
yeah, I'm very glad to see this process beginning and in the hands of the Building and License Department here. Just curious if you could give me a little insight into your philosophy in this regards as to a rewrite of the code or an update of the code, how or if the comprehensive development plan will be a part of your philosophy or looking at how the codes are affected or influenced by what is suggested in the CDP.
What I would say is, if we look at the zoning methodology, we'll take a look at the CDP primarily and how that would be reflected in any amendments that we do in the first two phases here, which would be internal research and public outreach. So that if there are any amendments, we're looking at ones that will, one, clarify things for not only the city, but any applicants that come in to do anything as far as building and licensing is involved with, and how the CDP, that's going to be more zoning, I believe, is how that will be reflected. But that'll be something that we take a look at in those first initial phases.
In the question I guess I'm going after also is, in rewriting of these codes, specifically as reflected in the CDP of the vision of the city, are we looking at rewriting the codes of what we are today or what we want to be in 5 to 10 years from now and maintaining that character of the city or managing that? I just want to bring that out to you in the sense that I think this has got to be a hand-in-glove kind of aspect of the reflection in the CDP, which is the vision for the city 10, 20 years from now. But the codes are the ones that really reflect how that's going to happen. So I just be conscious of the fact, and as long as I'm here, I will be reminding you of that. I guess also, we have approved $100,000 in the budget for the rewrite of the code. So I'm also cautious of the sense that taking what we have and updating or manipulating or what have you, there may be many other ways out there that other communities and municipalities have found to approach these issues in a much more modern, if you will, or way in which the applicants and the municipalities can function better on this. So I'm appreciative of keeping it in-house in some regards, but sometimes if we just look within ourselves, we really don't find the answers that we need. So looking, again, outside to more modern codes, I know we also have a good relationship with general code, which I hope they're going to be a process in this process of some sort. So just kind of looking at the philosophy of moving this whole thing forward.
Mayor, if I could, please.
Anybody else? Commissioner Thier? And
Yeah,
then
thank you.
Commissioner Good?
So the comments about to make, I just want to make sure I understand. They're not that I don't have confidence in your abilities, or I'm not comfortable with you in this position. But the reason why I was pretty insistent on putting money in the budget to help with the rewrite of the code is that my expectation is if we did it all in-house, it would take us 10 years. You're showing us it's going to take us somewhere between 7 and 8. And even as you're admitting, that's probably aggressive. You mentioned in your PowerPoint, 7 to 13 months to do, and again, I won't reflect back it, but a piece of code, but said, hey, it took us 2 years to do basements. So again, I have that concern. The other concern I have is, we have we've got multiple large projects that are going to get started here really soon, right? So we've got One Rehoboth, we've got Bellhaven, we've got Oceanside Reserve, just to mention 3, and there are others. So your time, your team's time is going to be literally going to be maxed out, just trying to manage those projects as well as the normal stuff we have going on here, because those projects will happen and we'll have the same number of normal projects that we have going on around town as well. So I question whether you yourself and your team will really have the time to commit to this, to not only be effective, but to hit these timelines. So when I look at this, I take into consideration some of your comments, these multiple large projects. This is not a 7-year project. It's probably a 10-year project. I've also would echo some of the concerns, but probably slightly different from Commissioner Gossett, which is we'll get 3 to 4 years into this project, and then we'll be backtracking and rewriting stuff that we're going to write over the next year just because things are going to change. So is it 10 years? Is it 12 years? Is it 15 years? So I'm going to come back to my point, which is the reason why I put money in the budget was, one, because I didn't want it to take 10 years. I was hoping we could get it done in 2 to 3 years and then move forward. And when I say move forward, get into a maintenance mode so that as items are coming up, either they're coming up unexpectedly or we're doing our own planning and we're saying, hey, we're going to need to revise that particular piece of code, we can do it. Other benefit of doing it trying to get it done in the next 2 or 3 years is that then aligns with when we'd have to do the major update under CDP. So we're far enough along in the code, we've kind of formulated in our head where we want to go with this thing. we can really effectively write that next CDP or update that next CDP. The last thing I'm going to say is, and again, was mentioned before, is, there are other approaches out there, right? Some things have been presented to this community over time, whether that's form-based code, whether that's some of the ideas of Dover Cole. We don't have that expertise in-house, right? And again, this has nothing to do with you, right? It's just we don't have it, and we've never had it. So that's another big reason why I was looking to, not why I was looking, but why I put money in the budget for a consultant to help us with the code, is to bring some of that outside expertise in-house and help us move forward. The big risk for us in not getting, for example, 236 done, and it's not the only one, is we continue mired in kind of what we're mired today, or we continue the process today, which is that the Board of Adjustment is defining what the code is. And that was never the intent of the state, right? The intent was always that the mayor and commissioners were as elected officials, would be responsible for setting the code, not to get into a situation where the Board of Adjustment is setting the code because the code hasn't been updated or ambiguous. So the quicker we can get this code updated, the quicker we can get out of this situation where the Board of Adjustment is essentially defining the code for us.
Anybody else? Okay, Commissioner Good?
Mayor, yeah, thank you, Corey. Yeah, this is long overdue, but I want to add something that I think is sort of a more general and pretty important aspect of this. If all of you recall how most of the people affected by the mid-October trailer ordinance weren't even aware of what was going on. They weren't aware in August, they weren't aware in October. Many of them, on the Monday following that Friday vote, received a notice that they had to move their trailer within 30 days. And I know some of them personally. I didn't know them until that third week of October, but that's when they contacted me. So I'm hoping, because we're like antiquated in terms of having a listserv that the city can use to contact all property owners, business owners, builders, developers who have ever had any interaction with the city. And I think this time, in order to avoid the same missteps that, in my view, took place with that trailer ordinance, which, was sort of a misguided thing to begin with, very sort of spot zoning type of governance, we need to contact as we go to public hearing. We can't rely on lines in the sand and reach out Rehoboth. They don't have the market penetration that we need. That's a very specific group of citizens who happen to log into those things or open the lines in the sand. Contact everybody, especially on code issues which involve like noise or changes to the FAR, and even this residential sprinkler system. I know that's far off, but that's something where you need the input of builders and developers who know the space, because maybe they've already dealt with it in Newcastle County or wherever they've dealt with it. So I'm hoping we can modernize a bit. I know there's been some reluctance in City Hall to acknowledge that we need to have a means to contact every property owner, business owner, builder, developer, when an issue will affect them, so they at least are given the opportunity to come to these public hearings. And I know you do have public outreach on there, but the means we go about that has not worked well. And I hope, Mr. Tedder, now that you're here and have been for a year, this issue has been raised a couple times and we haven't made, any progress on it. So I hope that can happen. Since this will be a lengthy process, we have the time to get ahead of it and to do this properly and not have people blindsided by code changes that they never learned about.
Anybody else up here?
Mayor, if I may, just
Commissioner
also,
Gossett.
you may not be able to answer this at time, but the mixed-use task force has, I believe, been put on pause or hold. Will that have any impact on this, or will that subject be taken up again as part of this, or just where do we stand with that?
Well, I believe that you'll have a presentation this upcoming regular meeting this month from Wallace Montgomery. We presented in front of the Planning Commission to get their comments on the main tenets. This code revisions although it's been a priority for the commissioners to revise the codes, the mixed-use task force is working in parallel with that. So right now, there's no plans on making any changes to it. We will continue to seek comments from commissioners later this month, and then to have the mixed use brought back in July. That's the current plan right now. We haven't made any decisions other than that.
Mayor, if I could, please.
Commissioner Thayer?
Yeah, so I'd asked this question previously, and I appreciate that you weren't here in the meeting. But before I get to that, so I do want to come back to Commissioner Good's comment. I guess it'd be twice in a meeting. Look, I agree, right? We need to have a very effective communications plan, as we go forward and rewrite the code. And I'll just leave it at that. It was mentioned at a previous, or it's been mentioned to me, maybe not at a meeting, but that the mixed-use task force was going to go on hold. I think what I just heard from you is that the mixed-use task force is not going to go on hold. And if that's the case, again, one of my fears here is we've got what you've presented here today, the code updates this code update process that you present here today, and then we've got mixed use over here, so we've got two streams going in parallel. How do we ultimately bring them together, or how do we make sure that there's not, duplicate work going on here? Who manages that, and how is that managed? Well, one, is it going on hold? If it's going on hold, you don't have to answer the next questions, which is, how is it managed? Who manages it?
I think the best answer I can give to that today is that we'll come better equipped to answer that at the regular meeting this month, when we were going to present the main tenets, the comments that we've gotten from the mixed-use task force as well as the planning commission on how the integration of that would work if we continued to keep it, how that would play out with the priority list for the code updates. Because the mixed-use task force is, I'll bring it back to the timeline here, is primarily working in Articles 2 and 3. And it's living in most of those codes live in the zoning code. And before we wanted to, what our thought process was to work on Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment first, and add administration and enforcement before we really dived into use regulations, height, density, and area. And that is where they're also looking at parking, but primarily it's in these zoning areas that are further down the line. So no decisions have been made, no official decisions have been made on the mixed-use task force. If it would be amenable to the commissioners, I'd like to have a better response for that in June this month.
Let's reiterate that Wallace Montgomery will be here on June 20th at the regular meeting to do a presentation on mixed use. I'd suggest that would be the appropriate time to ask more questions and get into more detail.
Mayor, I do have one clarification on that, because I think there's a reason Commissioner Thayer and I are confused. We were told, I think by the biweekly report that Mr. Tedder sends every other Friday, that the mixed-use task force, which, by the way, I had moved that we not hire for $47,000 Wallace Montgomery. I felt that we had two members of that task force who felt they could manage the task. They're both trained attorneys. But unfortunately, my colleagues, in spite of two of them saying, yes, it would be nice to think we could do this without a consultant and we could just have the staff do it,
Suzanne,
went ahead with it.
Suzanne,
So I think
I'm going to stop you because I
we
just
need to
said it
clarify
will
whether
be
the
on.
mixed-use task force
Suzanne.
is going forward or not.
Suzanne.
This is not acceptable.
We are going to discuss this further at the next meeting. There's no point in getting into it now.
Well,
And
I won't
Mayor,
be
if I
present for
can-
personal reasons. at
Suzanne,
the
you
next
do
meeting.
not have the floor at this point. Thank you.
Well, I'd like Mr. Tedder to
Suzanne,
respond
you
on the
do not
status of
have
that
the
task
floor.
force.
And we will do that at the next meeting. Do you want to explain anything now or prefer to wait to the next meeting?
Yeah, I'd like to provide some clarity. So, commissioners, you are correct in that The plan has been to pause the mixed-use task force after the main tenants were agreed upon. So that's after, I think, the regular meeting coming up. However, the purpose of pausing the mixed-use task force was so that we didn't have two consultants working, doing duplicative work on code updates. If we want to go this route where we don't hire a consultant to work on the code updates, I would foresee that the mixed-use task force would continue because we would need Wallace Montgomery to finish what they started. If we go a different route and want to use the $100,000 that we budgeted for code work, then we could look at having just one group doing the code revisions instead of potentially having duplicate work done.
Thank you. So again, this will be on the June 20th regular meeting for additional discussion. And you want to, actually, I want to go to the public at some point. And we can do that now. Is there any members of the public who would like to add any 2 cents to this? No. All right, go ahead.
I just wanted to conclude. I will look into, Commissioner Thier and Gossett, the other ways, other avenues to look at this. The reason why I had put minimal consulting work is it was hard to look at this time estimate on these zoning chapters and say, how is a consultant going to make this faster? Maybe internal research that could get done a little faster. Public outreach, though, what we brought up here is extremely important, and that would have to be done locally in person here. And I know that consultants groups, they send out polls sometimes, but we'd want to meet with people in person and talk with them and maybe give presentations in person, meet with business owners, legal review here in-house, possibly if it has to also be looked at outside, and then considerations in the meeting times here, that's a portion of it. So we did think about getting consulting groups, and we will look at, there are some other great municipalities that have other code sections that have worked on some of these issues before, and we will look at that. Next time I present, when I come back, we can look at maybe a hybrid approach to see where we can use some consultants and what things that we could get done rather quickly in-house too. And that's all I had. Thank you for the comments today.
Thank you, Corey. You did a good job. Appreciate it. With that, move on to the next item of new business, which is discuss setting the city's real estate tax rate for the tax year beginning July 1, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. Our charter requires that we set the city's real estate tax rate at the June regular meeting, correct?
Correct.
And so therefore, we put on this agenda opportunity to discuss it in case anybody's entertaining any changes. For right now, the support document includes the current rate on there, correct?
Correct. And the current rate of 0.0775 cents per $100 of assessed value is what was budgeted for in the FY26 budget this year, but we also put in the staff report how you can calculate that assessed value. But again, this is for discussion today, and happy to answer any questions.
And as a support document, again, we have the ordinance in there. Anybody would like to discuss any changes other than what's there? I'm fine with leaving it alone.
Just one,
Commissioner Saunders?
Mr. Tedder, and am I correct, and I believe I am, that we're not using the county's new assessment, we're using our own assessment?
Correct. It's our own. And the property tax brings in about $2.6 million in revenue.
I just want the public to know that, so that there's a little confusion out there, I believe, about the county assessment versus the city assessment. Thank you.
Mayor?
Commissioner Good?
I've decided it's not appropriate or at this point if just feasible to do a repeal of last year's hike. I believe it's either 28 or 29%. But I'd like everyone to note we need to bring back some fiscal sanity. The tax hike that was taxes that were property taxes that were due last August 31st, 2024, netted the city an additional $592,000. That basically paid for a $750,000 check that was cut on May 24th to buy a house for Mr. Tedder, well, within 7 years. So going forward, some fiscal sanity has to prevail here. So we cannot, yes, we're not going to change, I'm not suggesting we change the property tax rate. We are where we are, but I believe enough is enough, and this is just one aspect of the dysfunction that has pervaded this board at least since April 8th, 2024, when contracts were signed beyond the means of a city of our tax base.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Mayor, if I could, please.
Commissioner Thayer?
Yeah, so I would like to change the tax rate. I would like to take it back down to what it was before it was raised last year. And if everyone recalls, it was raised last year because at the time, a deficit was being projected. I'm going to kind of put that one aside and really talk about something else. But what I'm proposing for now is just to take the property tax rate back down to what it was. As Commissioner Good mentioned, the 29%, and everyone else up here can correct me if I'm wrong, the 29% also applied to water fees as well as wastewater treatment fees. Is that correct? Plus or minus, is that what everyone recalls?
1 percentage point, yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, I'm not proposing to take those down back to where they were. But we're going to continue to do analysis, particularly on water, and the reason for that I'll get to in a second. Back in February, we passed our fund balance policy, okay? And on our fund balance policy, there are basically the city has three entities, if you want to call it that. So we have what's known as the general operating fund, so think of that as general operations, police, Department of Public Works, and so on. We have a second entity, which is our water entity, okay? So we pump water out of the ground, we pipe it around here in the city, we sell it to Dewey, we sell it to a few other places as well. And then the third entity, and that is really a Rehoboth Beach entity, so we own that. We're really the owners of that. I would call that, almost refer to that as a profit enterprise. The third is the wastewater treatment plant, which is clearly a partnership between us and the county and North Shores. If we look at the fund balance policy, when we pass this for the general operating fund, our minimum, I'm looking at the numbers here, right? So we determined that our fund balance minimum needed to be $21.6 million. At the time, and this was based on the FY24 audited financial statements, our fund balance was almost 23.9 million. So we had an excess above what our policy called for of $2.2 million. So in other words, put it differently, we have 2.2 million more in cash in the bank than our policy says we should have. In FY25, for the general fund, we are going to have another surplus, and the surplus is $4.57 million. So if we add that to the 2.2 million, we're now going to have 6.8 million more in cash in the bank than our policy calls for. I think, one, with the tax rate, the property tax rate, it was raised in error last year, so I think it's something we should fix. Two, considering we have substantial amounts of cash, more than we should have based on the policy, it's just another reason to take that back to where it was. I do understand the policy calls for the city manager and the finance director to come up with a plan on what to do with this 6.8 million, and I'm confident that they'll do that. But I think at a minimum, we need to fix the error that we made last year. As far as water goes, and this will be my comment on water, why we need to look at water, particularly water rates, the water entity. Again, I won't go through all the numbers. I'll just hit the high ones here, which is that using FY24 audited financial statements, we have about $11 million more in cash in the water entity than our fund policy calls for. We're going to generate in FY25, which is the fiscal year that just ended, another $2.3 million in surplus. So we'll now have $13.2 million in additional cash there. Having said all of that, particularly with water, we mentioned PFAS earlier. We're, high level budget of about $4 million for that. So we do know that we are going to spend some of that money. I do have the question as it relates to that is, that fund balance, right? This is the city's entity. I mean, that's really the city of Rehoboth Beach money, right? It's not, the people who we sell water to. We all know that, Dewey's getting a fantastic rate on their water. So I do think we need to have conversations about where this $4 million comes from, right? It shouldn't just all come from the fund balance, because that means the city residents would be paying for all of it. Again, I just kind of wanted to highlight, we got to look at the water fund in a little more detail. But for now, I'd like to see I'd like to see the mistake that we made a year ago fixed. And when I say a mistake, I think it's really important that I point out that, my fellow members up here, particularly the ones that were here last year, they made the decision based on information they were getting from the director of finance, which turned out to be incorrect. So I don't think it's fair, or I don't want to be interpreted as saying that, the folks up here made a mistake. They took the information that was given to them and they made a decision. So I'd like to see it set back.
Mayor?
Commissioner Good?
Yeah, Commissioner Thayer, I'm not opposed to a repeal of the property tax rate. I just thought because of looming other expenses, it was time to move forward. Yes, it was a mistake because a deficit was announced in March, then it turned out to be a surplus. However, I don't think we should laud ourselves over what's happened. I voted against borrowing $5.5 million back in December to finance the lifeguard station. Never mind that it was voted upon a few years prior not to be financed with debt. So we took our debt to over $68 million. So I'd be open right now, even though unfortunately we paid about $30,000 to a financial advisor to take out that $5.5 million, to paying that off with, if you have concluded, Commissioner Thayer, that our reserves are ample as you have, why don't we pay off the $5.5 million, which I think was financed at just over 4% interest rate? That would be one idea. As to the water rates, that we need a major look at the equity between the various areas we service with water, who are water customers. The most urgent thing is we're spending $200,000 to tie into Tidewater over behind the Walmart, and that would mean when we have water shortages in July, as we had on July 6th, 2024, we would be selling water at a loss to Dewey because we'd be paying Tidewater $8 per 1,000 gallons, but we sell it to Dewey at $5.05 per 1,000 gallons. So we have a real problem with water rates.
Can we bring it back to property tax?
Property taxes, I sort of decided because property taxes are relatively low, it was an error. We have so many other problems to confront, but I would certainly, especially if I were here on June 20th, I would, if someone really does want to make a motion to roll back the property taxes to the rates that were voted on in June of 2024, I would be fine with that. And I appreciate you bringing it up, Commissioner Thayer.
Mayor, I just want to address the Beach Patrol Station debt, if I could, for a moment. I'll keep it brief, but I think it's important.
We're supposed to be on property taxes.
Okay, but I think it all fits together. So when I look at the Beach Patrol Station, I think about us as a tourist community, and to me it falls into what I refer to as my head as the 90-10 category. okay? Which means that 90% of the benefit, well, let me put it differently, 10% of the benefit goes to the residents who pay the taxes, 90% goes to the tourists. So one of the reasons, there's multiple reasons why we would want to finance a beach patrol station. One is it's a large, long-term capital project. It's going to last us a minimum 30, 40, 50 years. So in that case, debt should always be considered. But if we do, as being proposed here, we take our fund balance, right, which is the city residents' money, and pay down the debt of the lifeguard station, then I'm basically telling the residents, you're paying for the lifeguard station, when the reality is that 90% of that cost should be borne by the tourists through our tourist revenues, parking, other taxes and fees, and if we finance it, then we can essentially pay for it over time with our tourist revenues, not with the city revenues. I'm not going to take the residents' money, which is the fund balance, and pay for a beach patrol station. That should be paid for primarily by the tourists. That's just my view on it. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that.
Anybody else up here before I go to the public? Commissioner Gossett?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Thayer, I appreciate your thoughts on that with the fund balance and the healthy fund balance that we have. My concern is that the forecast or the budget was done with the tax increase there of 7.75%. And the tax rate is the only stable revenue source that the city has. Everything else of our revenue sources are parking, fines, hotel tax, rental tax, transfer tax. And they're all based on use. With the current economy that we're going through in the United States, and there's discussion of recession, et cetera, travel, I am hesitant to make that change to reduce that rate back because that is the only stable income source that the city has at this present time. You know, we have a strong fund balance, we have an overage, but that maybe have to put into place at some sort, because again, tourism is our prime concern here, and if that falls off, that is going to have a direct revenue to the revenue loss to the bottom line. So just the consideration of that when making these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Czerniawski?
I want to concur with Commissioner Gossett. And at the time, there were other considerations that were considered when the tax rate increased, and looking at our peers, the ratio of tourist revenue versus what residents are paying. I mean, those were several considerations that were given at the time, and I'm in favor of keeping it the same.
Thank you. Members of the public, would anybody like to comment? Francis? Let Ann get that microphone turned on, Francis, and then identify yourself in relationship to the city, please.
Francis Kelleher, 318 Stokely Street. I presented before the commission before what the property taxes were in a range of cities in the state of Delaware, and to show that our property taxes, while people can just use words and talk about they're low, they're actually, relatively speaking, to all other towns in Delaware, especially towns that are our size, they are not low. They are actually high for the local municipal taxes. And so I want to just say that I support wholeheartedly everything that Commissioner Thayer has just said. And there hasn't been enough specific evaluation of costs and who the users are. And that needs to be done so that we get off of this just page of saying things that are really not true and are not backed up by data.
Thank you, Francis. Anybody else? If not, we'll bring it back to council. If there's no further comments, this is on the June 20th regular meeting for consideration. meaning a vote. With that, next item of new business is presentation and discussion on a draft of the city's communications plan. Draft communications plan is embedded in the agenda. Who's taking the lead here? Lynn?
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present the city's communications plan to you. And I want to thank Aaron Corcoran, our communications assistant, who was essential in helping put this plan together.
Raise your hand, Aaron. We missed identifying you this morning. Thank you.
So when the city manager asked us to put together a communications plan, the first step we wanted to take was to find out what was and was not working well regarding our current communications. And on this slide, you see some of the many tools that we use to communicate, including lines in the sand, a employee internal newsletter, our alerts, our website, social media, advertising, etc. So to find out how things were working, we used Reach Out Rehoboth to present a survey to the community. The survey was up from October to November 2024, and we received 59 stakeholder responses. I wanted to note that this was up at the same time that we were doing a strategic plan survey. So there were a lot of surveys out there, but we did want to get some feedback. As you can see from the responses to this question, the communication tools that the community uses the most are lines in the sand, the city website, our social media platforms, and Reach Out Rehoboth. We asked what kind of information people wanted to receive from the city. We provided lots of options and asked them to choose all that applied. The highest responses were people want to know about city events and programming, city services and schedules, construction notices and updates, and project updates. We asked people to rate the city's communication efforts overall, and 70.6% said that they meet or exceed expectations, and 29.3% said that they were below expectations. We also asked about how often people wanted to hear from the city. I was surprised that there were any daily, but there were a few. So related to that, it was about down the middle between folks who wanted to hear from the city weekly and those who wanted to hear from the city monthly or bi-monthly. And then we also asked folks to rate the city's communication based on a range of characteristics. And as you can see, overall, the communication efforts were rated highly. Where we scored lowest was on the information being transparent and accurate. So using
Sorry, could you give us, the sample of respondents was 59 people? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, 59.
Not very worried about that, especially some of them aren't even Rehoboth Beach stakeholders.
No, all of these were City of Rehoboth stakeholders.
Okay.
Yes, they were self-identified City of Rehoboth stakeholders, and that represents about 5% of the city's year-round population. So based on this information and our experience, we came up with 4 areas for goals and objectives. One was to increase communication efforts. So one area that we are focusing on is additional social media posts. With Aaron on board, we're able to do more of that, and our goal is to have at least 3 posts from the city each week. Transparency was an issue that was identified, so we have tried to be conscientious about providing additional information and lines in the sand about decisions that the Board of Commissioners will be considering or have made. And one possible suggestion would be to create an annual report for the city, to publish an annual report and provide that to all stakeholders. A second recommendation would be to standardize the city's branding and messaging. The city does not have an official logo. We have an official city seal that is used as the city's logo, but the city's brand is more than its logo. The logo is a graphic representation of the brand. The city's brand is its unique identity, its personality, and that helps shape how the public perceives the city. So if interested, the city could undergo a branding identification process. In my past experience, that has been led by communications consultants. The third goal would be to increase citizen engagement and awareness. Next year, the Reach Out Rehoboth contract is due to be renewed. I think it's an effective tool, one that we don't use as much as we probably could. It is the one tool that we use in which we gather information from our stakeholders. So not only are we talking to our stakeholders, we're listening to them through Reach Out Rehoboth as well. And then finally, to better equip and engage city employees. We are working on a FAQ document so that when phone calls are made with common questions to staff, everyone has the answer, and it's not, you don't need to be transferred to someone else to get your question answered. And then Aaron also is producing Making Waves, which is our monthly internal newsletter for employees, and we're going to be looking at how we can make that a more engaging publication as well. So I would welcome your comments, your additional suggestions.
Commissioners, anything? Commissioner Saunders?
Hi, Lynn. Question, do you actually have an email list of all of our stakeholders that we could send something? In other words, people request to join our communication systems, but if we wanted to send them something against their will, if you will, send it to everybody to broadcast it, is that possible? Do we have such a list?
I don't have such a list, and I actually was Googling that as the idea came up, and it said, what Google says is that there are ethical and legal ramifications that you need to consider for that. You cannot force someone to share their email address with you. You have to provide them with ways that they may do that, but you can't force it.
Is there a document, and maybe the mayor or Mr. Tedder could tell me, for instance, our tax bill that we get back, that they could fill in their email on a tax bill or something that they return to us so that we could create that list?
We could certainly solicit people to opt in to provide their email to us for communications, but we can't use, for instance, like utility billing records or something like that without their consent.
It just seems we're expecting people to sign up for our system, and maybe we're expecting too much.
And I would say the Lines in the Sand
We have
mailing
about
list-
7,700 subscribers to Lines in the Sand.
Anyway, that's great. I'm glad to
But
hear
that's
that.
inside and outside the
Oh, of
city.
course, yes.
Mayor?
Commissioner Good?
Yeah, this is a conundrum here with the listserv, but yes, that would be the most efficient means to, with the quarterly refuse, water, wastewater bills, or some means that we're already, sending out to ask people whether they'd like to be part of City Hall listserv, and with a disclaimer that we're not going to share their email, with outsiders. That's step one.
I
Step
think
two.
there's a FOIA request, you may have to, but I'm not sure.
Other municipalities, neighborhoods have done this, and I don't think people have the incentive to sue because they're being provided information that's relevant to them, if they're property owners, if they're business owners, if they're whatever. But my second issue is I think the public should know that the communications department had you, beginning, I think, in 2022, and
21.
2021, there had been a predecessor. But you added a half-time assistant about a year ago, which has grown the department by 50%, right there. And, well, with all due respect, this Reach Out Rehoboth, I know some people think it's been effective. I think the problem is that it draws from a select group of people who tend to participate in it, and it's a limited number. The contract is up. I'd be in favor of not renewing it, absolutely not. And reevaluating why we can't be more efficient with the resources we're throwing at communications. I mean, we've expanded the department by 50%, but I don't think we're doing any better. And it's like we're back in the 20th century, being too afraid to assemble this listserv. People, all of you get emails from various people. You don't turn around and sue them for daring to send you an email. You can, you unsubscribe from their newsletter or whatever it is that they're sending you. It's not like Google has protected you from somehow being so weak and helpless that you can't, suffer through. So I don't know. I think the whole mindset here, there are some people who believe, and I'm probably one of them, the city has never wanted to do sort of these simple communications methods because then it precludes growing city hall staff and having all these administrators here. And I understand you're retiring in August. I mean, that's been public information as per several things I've received, and I think it's time to rethink how to streamline and make communications in this city more modern and more efficient.
Commissioners, anybody else? Commissioner Markert?
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate, certainly the fact that we actually have a local newspaper, which a lot of other places don't have. And in terms of, when you talk about, who gets what kind of information and how we get it and all that kind of stuff, I would say the bulk of what the city turns out, it's distributed, but then it gets picked up by the newspaper, and then the newspaper amplifies it. So, I think a lot of people are reasonably well in touch about issues, maybe not so granular, but they know when things happen, both good and bad, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm very surprised, especially on social media, even when it's Facebook, which is like old people, right? So I think it's very suitable for us, But, we have this 302 group. I don't know who the 302 group is, but they're very effective, and they put out, pictures about things. It's very positive. I mean, I don't think we could do better than they do, in terms of positive information about the city and all that kind of stuff, what's going on. And 302 doesn't necessarily isolate itself with just strictly Rehoboth, but Rehoboth is in it a lot, so, I think that's good. But I think our communication, I think whatever we plan or try to roll out really needs to be in conjunction with these other entities that are helping us, and to better manage that, because a lot of that, we come out. There may be some kind of news. I see like Coast News. I see WRE or whatever it is, and then stuff from the Cape Gazette. And then we'll announce something, and I see it like days later. You know what I mean? Like it's much more immediate coming from them than from us. So.
But we are working with them, helping getting.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm just saying that's happening, but the appearance of it is, it seems like it's coming from them first. So.
The other thing I would say about social media, certainly, there are opportunities for collaboration. At the same time, I think it's important that the city tell its story.
Oh, sure.
And-
Yeah,
and
and
be the
maybe you need to
person,
rebut
be
it or
the
amplify it, or,
entity
yeah.
Sharing that
absolutely.
information.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Members of the public? Jan? Identify yourself in relationship to the city, please.
Jan Conacy, 42 Oak Avenue. This is something I feel very strongly about. I'm not here to talk about this, but I didn't know it was on the agenda. So, first of all, self-identified people in Rehoboth. I've never used Reach Out Rehoboth except the first time when they had that thing about dogs. And secondly, I don't use social media. I found Nextdoor to be nasty beyond belief. And so when I go to the city, people identify as being in the city of Rehoboth. They have no idea they're not in the city of Rehoboth. Some people think they live east of the highway, they're in the city of Rehoboth. So self-identified is not a really good way to do it. We talked before about putting something in the bills about the text messages, which everybody wants to get when there's water main breaks and all that stuff, and lines in the sand. It was in once. I have the card. It was a great card. Folks, as Bunky said, we're not 25 as a whole in this city. In addition, we're a city of non-resident property owners. Most people don't live here. My street has 2 people on it, in the year. So if we want to reach the people, then I think we need to put it in more than once. Secondly, 59, self-identified, that doesn't mean anything to me, because that's not the people in Rehoboth. You have to reach out, and reaching out on Facebook, I'm sorry, I don't do Facebook, and most of the people I know don't do it. So look and see your audience. 5 years ago, I have a son who's 28. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he was kind of helping me on an election thing, and he goes, "Mom, Rehoboth is the only city I know where you can't win an election using social media. You have to get out, you have to meet people, you have to send emails, you have to do stuff like that." Maybe things have changed because, there are people up there who are way younger. I mean, Ed's way younger than me, and so is Craig, but so is Mo. Anyway, I just think this whole thing about communication is you have to see your audience. I used to be a lobbyist. I look at my audience. My audience is not on Facebook or on Nextdoor. They want information from the city, and to send it once in a bill, no. You repeatedly send it to people. What does it cost us to print those things and drop them in the bills? And eventually they will see them. But you cannot, absolutely, you cannot use people's emails. You cannot do that. That's total violation. And I am not a big fan of Reach Out Rehoboth, frankly. And if only 59 people signed up for it, the most responses we ever got was when it went out on social media before it was locked. So,
Thank you, Jan. Anybody else? This is your opportunity. All right, thank you very much. Back up
Mayor,
here.
sorry.
Commissioner Good?
Clarify, no, we would be, people would be assenting and giving their consent based on utility bills. This was done where we lived in Maryland back in the early 2010s. I mean, I don't know. I think somehow Rehoboth views itself as more special, or maybe it just thinks it's more open to lawsuits because people are constantly suing the city, sadly. But no, we have to have a different mindset. I'm very concerned that we're overthinking this. Reach Out Rehoboth had it was a biased sample. It wasn't, and again, a lot of the people who identified themselves, I agree with Ms. Conacy, who identified themselves as living in Rehoboth Beach, lived in the country club, lived in the Glade, lived on the Forgotten Mile. They're in unincorporated Sussex County, but because their zip code is 19971, we probably got some Dewey Beach people in there too because we share a zip code with them. So, I hope we can modernize. It's like we're not even taking advantage of the tools that are efficient and inexpensive and modern. We're stuck in the Stone Age, in my view.
Anybody else? Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, if I could ask, we've introduced a new website recently, but I have not, it may be available, but I've not seen any analytics back from the website as to what is the most popular question ask or search or what have you. Is it possible to get that kind of information that could then help influence perhaps our messaging and what is important to the users of the website, Google Analytics, if you will, or what have you?
Sure. I think we included some basic website data in the quarterly communications report that I think was attached to the city
If you could
managers.
resend it, I obviously missed it, so I'd be happy to look at it again, please. Thank you.
One other comment, Commissioner, we are doing a survey, and this survey is anonymous. We don't know who is responding to it on our website pages, several of our website pages through Reach Out Rehoboth, where we ask 3 emoji-based questions. What is your opinion of this webpage? Did you find the information you wanted? Do you have any suggestions? And we're getting, do you remember, Aaron? It's like 200 responses so far to those surveys. And the information is generally been pretty positive. I will tell you the Boardwalk and Beach rules and guidelines page is the one that gets the most responses. There have been a couple of suggestions where we've been able to tweak information on the website based on the feedback. So,
Good start.
thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Lynn. Aaron, thank you too. With that, we'll move on to the next item of new business, which is presentation on Dark Skies Initiative to Reduce Light Pollution. There is a presentation embedded in the agenda, and otherwise, do you want to introduce?
Sure, so Ms. Jan Conacy, if you'd like to, sure. I'll get this up for you.
Need to be at the microphone, Jan, at the micro, this one's.
And you can just use the.
Okay. No, Frank's going to do this. I'm just going to do a little introduction.
Jan, yeah, if you would introduce everybody,
Yes.
including revealing who your special guest is today.
My special guest, well, actually, the most important person here today is Frank Cooper, because Frank Cooper knows how to work this PowerPoint presentation. As you're probably aware, I am not technically, I didn't even know the city had a new website until someone told me recently. So I've missed all of that. So Frank is here as my partner, and so is Kate Markert also. And I will tell you how this came about. Some of you have heard this presentation before, but in 2020, for some reason, Frank and Kate and I were sitting around, and I was saying something like, we had this 2010 CDP, and I was looking at it and saying, okay, what can we do? Because most of the stuff that was in there, the action items had never been done. But what can we do? And I said, I really like Dark Skies. This guy came and made a presentation to us. It's included in the 2010 CDP. I love it. And Frank and Kate said they did too. I'm like, wow, I didn't know anybody else. So we made presentation to the Environmental Committee, the Boardwalk Committee, and the Mayor and Commissioners. And this was in the end of 2020, and it was also in 2021. At that time, the Boardwalk Committee adopted a resolution. The Mayor and Commissioners adopted a resolution supporting, asking for city streetlights, et cetera. So that's how but of course, and I will add, nothing happened. Resolutions are not kind of worth the paper they're printed on. So we came back, and we're back again. you know, third time. By the way, the 2022 CDP, which actually it's called the 2020 CDP, but it didn't get approved till 2022, also encouraged a dark sky involvement for the city of Rehoboth Beach. I feel very, very strongly about that. A lot has changed since 2020. One is the absolute horrible proliferation of, I call them searchlights, but all over people's houses. And so that they run 24 hours a day and they shine in your bedroom window, and many of us in this room have probably put up with them. The second thing that is happening, and it's happening in Lewis and Rehoboth, I don't know about other places, is as a light, a Delmarva Power light blows out on your street, they replace it with I guess, a searchlight. Remember how they used to show searchlights in the sky when car dealers open? Well, that's what these lights look like, and you'll see some more of that in Frank's presentation. The other thing that's happened is we were first. Lewis and Fenwick now are looking at dark skies. Lewis has already put dark sky lighting requirements in all of their new subdivision ordinances. Fenwick mayor appointed a committee to report back to her on dark skies. I have not gotten that report yet. But Lewis is pretty far along. Their mayor is supporting, and I think that they're ready. And frankly, we were first, and we should be first. We shouldn't let Lewis be ahead of us on this. And just a point of interest, Teton County, Wyoming, which is where Jackson Hole is, which is another resort area, that entire county went dark sky compliant this year. So I would like to introduce Fred, who can have Frank, I'm sorry, who can have a great conversation with Henry about kelvins and stuff that I don't know anything about. But Frank is a really knowledgeable person on dark sky. He's very knowledgeable on lighting, and so Frank Cooper is going to give the rest of this presentation, and then Kate, and if we have any questions, feel free to ask any of us.
Thank you. Frank, you're up. I'm still trying to get Kate identified. Maybe Bunky, you would. I did
introduce her. She just didn't raise her hand and stand up.
But her relationship to.
But she's not here as a wife of the family.
No, but she is the wife of Commissioner Markert. I think that needs to be noted.
I know who she is.
You do.
Okay.
Let's hope so.
You'll have to excuse me. This is a new system where the presentation's on the city computer rather than my laptop, and I wasn't prepared for that. So my notes that are attached to this are revised from what was submitted.
Do you have your laptop?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. If you can change the
Yeah, we can.
the HDMI, then I would much prefer that.
Yeah, this is just a PDF, so.
I plugged into the HDMI, just changing the input on the monitor system. I think Ann has to
You're
do
up
that.
there.
Okay.
So if you
Okay.
just put it in presentation.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's over there.
Okay.
Here, let me raise this up for
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Sorry for the delay. We are Dark Skies Rehoboth, and we are not an officially organized group, but we are a loose confederation of people who are interested in light issues in general, not just dark skies, but there's new issues that have come up with the advent of LED lighting and issues of color, temperature, and frequency. We did this presentation before, so I'll run through it very quickly because a lot of you are already familiar with this. And in the 2010 CDP, there was a resolution for responsible lighting. And later in the 2022 CDP, that was revised to include the words dark sky. So what we are trying to do here is what you've we've all tried to do is to actually implement some of the things in the CDP, and this being one of them. And it's actually low-hanging fruit. This is not, requiring a major code change or a shift in anything. But it's long overdue, and it's becoming critical, I think. So what is light pollution? There's four types that are dark sky compliant, and sky glow is one of the big ones, and that was the basic halo that you see above an urban area where the sky is light. There's glare, and glare is becoming more critical, I'll explain later. And light trespass, which is becoming an issue, and there's always been an issue with people shining lights. That they put security lights on their house so that they can see out, and then it shines into the windows of adjacent homes, and can really be disruptive of people's lifestyle. And the other thing is the waste of energy of a whole lot of lighting that really is just not directed at where it's needed to be, but is scattered about. This sky glow, as I said, is this dome, and you can see it here in this city, and you can also tell that you can't see really the stars at night, not nearly like anybody who's traveled to an area out in the desert west or something where it's really dark. I mean, the sky is an entirely different experience. And so this is becoming, with the advent of cheap LED lights, it's really proliferated the amount of light pollution. And so it's getting worse instead of better. And we're also beginning to realize that the health effects of this are kind of significant. So glare is, I don't know whether I guess most people here drive cars, and you might have noticed that car headlights, a lot of new ones, are really intense and can be very blinding. And this is also happening with lights on homes and street lights too. And I'll explain later why this is becoming a more critical issue. With light trespass is proliferating. It's become sort of, I don't know, a style right now to overlight your house. Everybody has uplights on everything in the whole, it's fine, I guess, if you want to light your house up, if you're shining the lights towards your house. But when it shines on your neighbor's house and in their windows, then it's light trespass. And it's the same thing as noise and stuff. It's things that people cannot avoid. So responsibility in this, and it's up to the city to kind of regulate this. This is new. This was brought to our attention, and this was submitted by Kathleen Niles. This is a new street light on Kent Street, and this is one of the things that concerns me most right now, is that Delmarva Power and Light is replacing our nice yellow street lights with these LED monstrosities. I mean, this is just going in absolutely the wrong direction, completely out of touch with the dark skies movement and the awareness of light trespass. These lights are the wrong color temperature. They are scattered in indiscriminate directions into people's windows and their homes. And I wanted to get into something I've become aware of lately, is that LED lights, typically LEDs themselves, produce light at a specific wavelength, as opposed to the sun or incandescent lights, which produce broad spectrum light, which is what our eyes are used to dealing with. Our eyes know how to deal with broad spectrum light, and our pupils dilate and whatnot, depending, and can regulate that. LED lights, most of the actual LEDs produce light on a single wavelength. And there are better forms of LED lights that have a broader spectrum, but a lot of the cheap stuff doesn't. And so you get these lights that technically aren't brighter, but they hurt your eyes. I mean, you literally feel pain, and you're like, the glare is intense, and that's what I'm seriously afraid of happening in this city, is that if Delmarva Power and Light starts to change the whole city to look like this, it's in direct conflict with our stated goals of preserving the charm and the look and feel of Rehoboth Beach. This changes it completely. I mean, it becomes a new place when you have high Kelvin, super bright lights everywhere. It's not the same town. So this is happening, this is starting to happen now. It's time to get ahead of this, because if once they start installing these things, to get them to come back and change it is going to be an uphill battle. So it's time to change the ordinance now to get ahead of this before it becomes a crisis, because we've had a couple of complaints now. There are going to be hundreds of complaints when they start rolling this out and it starts affecting the entire population of the city. So the light pollution is a waste of money and energy, and while the city doesn't pay for the lights themselves, in a macro sense, it's important that we not spend money lighting up the sky and things that we don't need. It's just a waste of money. And pollution, with 21 million tons of carbon dioxide per year are created through wasted light alone, which is really kind of a staggering number. The ecological import, the hatchling turtles are affected by light pollution. Before the advent of artificial illumination, hatchlings always oriented themselves towards the ocean by the brightest part of this field of vision. Historically, this has been the ocean, reflecting the brightness of the moon and stars. Now hatchlings get confused and disoriented as they clamber towards streetlights. And humans are not untouched. The humanity has evolved in this planet reliable cycles of light and dark. The addition of light into what was always darkness disrupts natural circadian rhythms. And as I was pointing out before, the intensity of these streetlights and the light trespass is going to exacerbate a problem that already exists. In other words, it's getting worse. Color temperature is a huge issue, and it's a huge issue with LED lights. And typically, they are a much brighter, bluer light, and this is more disruptive of human sleep cycle. It's also very discomforting to your eyes, and we are generally used to at night very low Kelvin, less than 3,000 degrees temperature Kelvin lighting, which is warm white and is much more inducive to good sleep patterns. It also makes people look better. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when they light people on, you know, a lighting director, anybody who's been involved in theater or television or whatnot, knows that you know, if you want people to look nice, you don't put blue-white light on them, you know, because it gives people a pallor. So it's comfortable lighting, it's easy on the eyes, and it's healthier. Now, where light's directed is one of the big issues that we have seen kind of abused, that people unknowingly put up a light and don't really think about where it's going other than where they want it to go. In other words, in the example you see here, they want to light the area and the ground around their house for security reasons. But the fact is that if you can see the light source, it actually diminishes your vision. In other words, your eye retina's closed, so the dark areas become darker. And in the picture on the screen, you can see the person standing in the gateway there. When your retinas are open and you're not staring at the light, you actually see darker areas better. So it's kind of self-defeating when you have light that isn't directed where it's needed as opposed to scattered around. So here are the basic tenets of, or the type of lights that dark sky compliant ones. And this is in the city's interest, that we have lighting that is directed where it's actually needed and nowhere else. So we're not spending money doing it. We're not staring at the light itself. We're able to see in the areas, you know, underfoot and in front of us where we need it. And of course, as I said before, the fact that the sky glow really diminishes the overall look of the city when you can't see the sky at night and the stars, then you're really missing out. And we're missing part of what the charm of Rehoboth is when we don't have a dark sky. So the mayor and commissioners adopted a resolution on June 14th, 2021, defining a program for the city and leased lights. So we really need to continue this and to finish up what we started. In other words, the Boardwalk Committee, when they had these committees, the Boardwalk Committee, the Environmental Committee, all were on board with dark sky compliance. As Jan mentioned, that now Lewis has beat us to the punch. We're requiring new projects to have dark sky. Probably the first easy thing is to address the building code so that new housing and new lighting, things that we do in the future, are compliant. So this is the easy stuff. Harder is stuff that's existing, and that would require careful consideration and a timeline to give people a chance to become compliant without burdening them. I really think that it's important that the city themselves set the standard here, that we lead the way. In other words, it's the lighting we put in and the new houses that go up are compliant, that becomes the trend. That becomes what people see as the new way. And I think other people will naturally follow that to some degree. So we're asking, please, to enact dark skies. I don't think you really need to invent the wheel here. There's sample ordinances in lots of jurisdictions that have already done this. The Dark Skies Committee, you can kind of adopt it as a package, so you don't really have to get too granular with it. In other words, this is low-hanging fruit. This is an easy program to adopt, and it will really have a huge impact on the quality of life and retaining the charm of our city, which is in all of our interests. So I'm going to leave this up and conclude my presentation. Are there any questions you have? Anyone has?
Frank, I'd just like to add one thing real quick.
Yeah.
And that is the proposal for the development over at Baymart, I forget what it's called, is requiring that all lighting in that complex would be dark sky lighting. So the developer knows that it's an asset. And I think it's an asset for the town also.
Yeah, it's kind of embarrassing that Ocean Baymart is ahead of us, honestly. I mean.
Yeah.
Thank you. It would be helpful if you could perhaps send us what the Lewis ordinance is and any other templates that maybe we could look at. Taylor will probably offer something in a minute, but he has dark sky experience that maybe he can share with us. I think you've given some examples, and I think if we drive around town at night, we can find enough examples to warrant this. I know this myself. It seems to be a proliferation in the last 3 or 4 years of everybody that has to light up the outside of their house. They put soffit lighting in, particularly on the second floor, and it lights up the entirety of the side of the house. not to mention the light spill that goes across the property lines. You know, with our property distances at the most 12 feet from house to house at the minimum, we can get a lot of light spill.
When we started this in 2020, we started with the Boardwalk Committee. And what surprised me, and there was something in the paper about it, what surprised me is the number of people who live in one of the condos on the boardwalk who wrote and said, thank God somebody's doing something, because we have boardwalk lights shining in our windows all the time. And in our conversations with Public Works here, we've determined that there's 3 phases of the street, the streets, and then the sidewalks, and then the boardwalk lights. But it would be very easy for the city to start changing that now. And I think there's a lot of support in the city. But I was absolutely amazed, and I think you've heard from, and I know that some of the people from Kent Street, which is where Frank's picture is from, are here today. And I know you've heard from other people because they've CC'd us on it too. But this hasn't been, we just said, let's try again and hopefully, but it's got to be an ordinance. When we first started this before, we were looking mostly at the boardwalk and its streets. But frankly, as Frank has said and as Stan has just said, what people are doing in their neighborhoods and the residences, we have to address everything now. There's 2 hotels that are kind of approved. They should be required to have all dark sky lighting. I will send you the ordinance, or should I send it to you, or who should I send the Lewis ordinance to?
Taylor.
Me,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Mayor,
So
some questions.
I still had some comments to finish. First, before I resume my comments, I wanted to indicate that there are 2 pieces of correspondence embedded in the agenda, one from Mike Fisher. He and his wife, Honey, live in the Henlopen, and their second floor dining room is eye level with the lighting outside. I've seen that, and it's horrible, actually. And then Jeff Cochrane, is he here by any chance? Jeff Cochrane lives 307 South Boardwalk, so he must be close enough to the boardwalk also where he gets glare and everything. I was around when we put the new boardwalk in, and one of the things we had to do was have the lighting engineered. I learned at that point that there's a formula and there's engineering all involved so that you get even distribution of lighting. You don't walk up the boardwalk in a bright area and a dark area and a bright area and a dark area. So there's got to be certain parameters there. Also, at the time we were designing the new boardwalk, we were looking at light spill intentionally on the beach part of it so that it would not be black. In fact, I'm surprised we didn't invite Keith Banks here, because he said he definitely had at that time opinions on lightness, brightness, and everything. Of course, again, I think we can do better on light spill or light pollution, maybe as you call it. But for me, I want to make sure that we have even lighting, whether it's in the city or on streets or on the boardwalk. I agree with you. Del Dot has been, or Delmarva Power and Electric, that controls certain of our lights. They don't control all our lights, but the ones they do control, I think you're right. We need to put some restriction on it for the color temperature. And if you go out at night and you drive around, you intentionally look for colors of lighting. You'll see they go, that there was a good rendering up there, that the lighting can be anywhere from orange color, which is called warm color, versus the blue on the right, which is a very stark coloration. And I think Dark Skies is recommending 3,000 Kelvin or something, so it's in the orange thing. So I'm all for preventing light trespass, preventing minimum glare, especially in the residential areas. But I'm also concerned again about providing adequate intensity of light for safety, especially if mandated by codes or insurance or something. So that's, Suzanne, did you want to say something?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the presentation and just, you know, when you're asking in general that all city lighting be dark skies compliant, so I think we should delineate, you know, that includes residential, commercial, and the municipal-owned properties, you know, like City Hall, for example. But in general, I think we need more data, because the whole, you know, motivation for these LED bulbs and lighting is for energy efficiency, right?
Yeah.
So we need data to figure out the trade-off, because, you know, it depends. Are we environmentalists or are we not? So I'm not sure how stringent we can be, because Delmarva Power has energy, you know, benchmarks they have to meet by whatever, I think 2030 is a pretty critical year in some of that. And my last issue is, I believe, because there was so much brouhaha over swimming pools, the code protects property owners whose immediate neighbors have swimming pools. There's a lot of restrictions on how bright the lighting can be and where it can be directed. The problem is that is maybe what percentage of the 3,400 properties here have swimming pools? Whatever, maybe it's 22% or something. But anyone, the remaining, whatever, you know, whatever it happens to be, 78% of property owners whose immediate neighbors don't happen to have a swimming pool were afforded no such protection. So that's inconsistent, uneven. So I think in the course of this dark skies, we have to make sure that look at what Corey is doing, you know, will be doing for the next, sounds like 8 to 10 years, that we have even restrictions on everybody, instead of this patchwork of, well, the swimming pool we had to regulate, we had to make sure, yes, for safety reasons, of course, there has to be good lighting around a swimming pool, but only the people next to them get the protection that probably everybody should have been afforded. So those are my thoughts. I think it's great. I appreciate all the time you put in it. I look forward to a little data, though, about the energy efficiency of these dark skies light bulbs versus the, you know, the default.
Yeah, I want to clarify that I'm not poo-pooing LED lighting. I mean, it's a great thing. It's vastly more efficient, and often in longer terms, it's a lot cheaper to operate just for replacement review. The thing is, there's, like everything, there's good and bad. And the original bunch of LED lighting, if I can put it that way, were kind of just pretty crude by today's standards. In other words, they're single frequency, high Kelvin lights that are really annoying and whatnot. There are better things available now that are LED, they're energy efficient. So it's good LEDs is what we want, not to get rid of LEDs, but just to pick a good version. One of the most disappointing things is that this was adopted as a principle back years ago, and when the existing city manager's office bought new lights for Rehoboth Avenue, they were not dark sky compliant at all. And so they haven't even been installed yet. So we're in a position now where we're going to be installing stuff that's worse than what's there now, just because of ignoring this issue. So it should have been dealt with then. Let's deal with it now so that doesn't happen again, that we don't get in a position where, you know, 2 or 3 years from now, because of planning and whatnot, that we're installing stuff that we went, oh my goodness, what were we thinking?
I mentioned earlier that Taylor had experience from his previous location, so let me give you the floor.
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, in my previous community, we went through the dark skies exercise essentially for almost a year, trying to decide what best fit the community. Ultimately, that city council decided they wanted to move forward with just city-owned lights. But I'm very familiar with the International Dark Skies Association, which is now known as Dark Sky International. They have model ordinances that we can utilize to come up with what fits best for our community. specifically on regulations for residential lighting. There's also contemplations of, do you want this to apply for new construction or existing, if there's a time frame that people would have to come to comply, commercial properties as well. And then we also have the difference here where we own the lights on Rehoboth Avenue and the boardwalk, but all of the other street lights are maintained and owned by Delmarva Power, so that's another consideration. So my recommendation would be staff can go back, we'll start researching the different aspects and figuring out the relationship with Delmarva Power and those street lights, look at residential with Corey and the building and licensing team, look at commercial regulations so we're ahead of new hotels that are imminently coming. And then we can bring it back, hopefully at a workshop with what we've learned and some strategies on how to move forward.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you so
Anybody-
much.
Let me just-
Anybody
I-
else
I will
up
add
here?
one more thing, and that is there's a perception among people in residential that this dark sky lighting is very expensive. In actuality, if you just go on the internet and put in dark sky compliant lighting, almost every lighting company has them, and you can get them for like $15 up to hundreds of dollars, just like regular lighting. They're not very expensive. And then, Stan, I don't know, Kathleen, who is one of the people who has that light on Kent, she wanted to talk. You can let her? Or
Yeah, we'll do
Okay.
public comment next. Are there any further comments by the commissioner?
I just said one.
Commissioner Marker?
Yeah, the only thing I want to just throw my 2 cents in, I have, I'm well acquainted with this topic, and when basically the LED, where the phase out of incandescent lighting occurred, I don't know how many years ago that was, and there was a lot of, I don't think that was necessarily well organized, and there was a lot of different types of bulbs and everything. But unfortunately, the good news is, I think the technology in the industry has sort of come to terms, caught up with the consumer, and you can get products that I think work very well under many different kinds of situations and stuff. So it's a lot easier, but there is some education that's required, because at least when you're dealing with, like, if you want to replace a light bulb, and we think in terms of light bulbs as wattage, which is the consumption of energy of an incandescent light bulb, which doesn't apply with LEDs, because LEDs are like, maybe 100th of that sometimes, so you have to start thinking about lumens. Lumens is really the intensity of the light that comes out of the thing. And even with that, I've seen when I've ordered some replacement bulbs, like these halogen lights and stuff like that, and you think you got a replacement, and no, it is not a replacement. It's like much dimmer than the original ones, and you may want something different. So there is a little bit of education for the consumer, and I'm just saying what the city does would be helpful in this process to maybe do some of that legwork in terms of, like, this is what you would need or something like that, or have some recommendations or things like that. So I just want to put that out there.
Mayor?
Commissioner Good?
Just to follow up, Ms. Conacy, we need data for the very reason that the statement you made about them not particularly being more expensive than other options, they're slightly more expensive, number one, the dark sky compliant bulbs, but the initial investment is higher because they do, over time, there's some cost savings in energy consumption. So the problem is, for like a builder who's trying to, to minimize costs putting in light bulbs in a new house, the initial cost of these dark skies bulbs is going to be higher. So we have to put it out there. You have to be, if people in general, they want to do the right thing, but not everybody wants to pay more money up front for these expected stream of, reductions in costs, down the road. A lot of people have a very short-term, view of spending money. So we're going to have that. We're going to be up against that. You mandate it, people might not have a choice, and that's fine. That might be fine. That might be the right choice. But we at least need to acknowledge that the upfront investment in dark sky compliant bulbs is slightly higher.
I wasn't talking about bulbs, Commissioner Good. I'm talking about the fixture itself that goes on the outside of your house by your front door. One of those fixtures.
That I haven't researched. That could also be slightly higher to
They're
be.
not. They're not.
Okay, they're the same.
researched them.
But the bulbs are
It's
pretty
really a matter
critical.
of selection, Suzanne. It's, you know, most of what this is just a shield or cover over the bulb that directs the light in a particular direction. So it's not a massive change in technology or anything. A lot of existing stuff happened to be dark sky compliant just by its design. In other words, it's not like a reinventing the wheel here. This is mainstream lighting we're talking about. It's just a matter of selecting those specific items that do not create light trespass. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive. Some of them may be, some of them may not. But it's hard to categorize it as being more expensive because I don't think in general it is any more expensive.
Let me go to the members of the public then. Anybody like to speak? No, you're first. Francis second. Did you want to speak? No, state your name and relationship to the city.
Yeah, my name is Kathleen Nilles, not Niles, and that's not my house. I took that picture with my iPhone from my house, showing how much it glares toward my house. But I guess my thought was, you know, the new Delmarva streetlights do very much create light trespass, and one reason is the color of the bulb, but that's not the only reason. The other reason is that particular light does not have any kind of a shade. It's mounted on the pole with something on top of it that it's fastened to. There's no shade whatsoever that prevents it from going laterally or horizontally into neighbors' homes. Now, I live in a home in which our living room and dining room is on the second floor with a lot of windows, clerestory windows, which without an expense of about $10,000 could not be covered. There's a lot of things about that light that are objectionable. So before that becomes the standard in Rehoboth, I would implore you to work with Delmarva Power to come up with an alternative that does not create light trespass into neighbors' homes. Kent Street is a very narrow one-way street where we are. We don't get a lot of traffic. There's no reason to have the street lit up like it's an airport runway or something, or a commercial parking lot. If I had an option, I'd rather not have any light at all there. But if we have to have a light, I prefer it to be something that just lights the street, doesn't shine horizontally into the neighbors' homes on either side.
Thank you, Kathleen. Francis?
Francis Kelleher, 318 Stokely. Is it okay if I show a picture over at the podium? So for 30 years, I lived down here.
Francis, you need to
I need
use
this, I'm
the
sorry.
microphone.
Yeah. So for 30 years, I was able to actually look up at the stars in my backyard. But unfortunately, the house next door to me was torn down. And this is my house at 318 Stokely Street. And this is the house next door to me. So you see all those bright lights, and I took this shot straight on my house. This is what actually the light shining on all my bedroom windows because my house is built on that right side of the house. Before my neighbor's original house was built on the right side of his lot with his little carport, small driveway on the left side, and then his yard in the back. But now I have all my bedrooms illuminated as if it's day, and that's all night. And I would like to give acknowledgement to Commissioner Sharnofsky, who in 2023 allowed me to come before the Environmental Committee, and I gave them a presentation on dark sky and showed them what was going on in the neighborhood and this proliferation of these houses with all this illumination. So I'm just showing you one real-life person who's been really negatively impacted by this light, and I'm going to show you my bathroom just to give you an idea of what it looks like inside. Now, you see that bright, this is my bathroom in the middle of the night, pitch dark, no lights on, and that's that stream of light. Now, guess what? That is coming from the upper soffit, the higher lights. Now, in this picture, you get to see how there's actually two streams of light. One that comes in from up above, and then one that comes in straight. If I open my bathroom door, that light goes all the way out into my entranceway of my house. So I don't like to, Suzanne uses the word euphemism all the time. I had to look it up. Now I know what it means. It's a euphemism to say this is light trespass. This is light invasion. Okay, and I just want to show you this for reference. This is our street, which Stokely on the third block winds along the lake, kind of the lake is behind. And so we have a windy street. The house that has all these bright lights has, as you can see there, a nice street light right in front. And this is the shot from my front of my house in the opposite direction. So going toward the ocean, and you can see, you know, we have a street light and then another one just back down there at the curve because the road curves around. So I just want to say one other thing, show you this, which I did present to the Environmental Committee. And I would like to say that the Environmental Committee voted unanimously that this was a topic that they would want to follow up on and address. Unfortunately, the committee was put on hold shortly thereafter. But this is our pool code, and our pool code has very simple language. It's not like dark sky thing, but it's very simple and it's effective. And you can read it there. I won't go through it, but it's that it just prevents that any lighting around the pool, you know, shall be such that it doesn't create a nuisance and it doesn't invade adjacent properties.
Thank you, Francis.
Okay, but I just want to say that only applies to the pool. It doesn't apply to the house, so it does not protect the neighbors, Suzanne, the pool code. It doesn't. We need a code, a simple code like this to protect everyone.
Thank you, Francis.
Can I submit my pictures for the record? Or is that needed?
Yeah, that would be appreciated for Ann.
Yeah, I'm glad to submit them. They're dated, they're marked, all on the back. And I couldn't say more of how important this matter is. It's a health issue, Mayor. It's not just a nuisance issue, and it does need to be addressed in a timely manner. We've suffered long enough.
Thank you, Francis. Anybody else like to talk? Go ahead. Your name and relationship to the city.
Good morning. Elise Burns, 130 Henlopen Avenue. Enough on light trespass. Everybody knows this is a major issue of mine. In the Pines, we see all these new homes with the soffit lighting that's trespassing on neighbors' properties. I've had a house adjacent to ours for the last 2 weeks with 24/7 security lighting on. and they're not there. And it's coming into the back of our house. But more importantly, the environmental issues. I mean, like Jackson Hole, like the town where Taylor came from in the desert, we are living in a national treasure. It's the Delmarva Peninsula, the Atlantic Flyway. We have millions of birds that come over our homes during their migratory periods. And all you have to do is look at that photography exhibit on the wall. I just looked at it. We've got 4 photos of birds, 1 of the northern lights. I mean, we are living under a treasure, and we could see our stars if we didn't have all this trespassing lights from Delmarva Power. So I just want you to think about that, maybe actually working with our other neighboring communities. So we make this a whole dark sky area, you know, working with Lewis, Fenwick, Dewey. I mean, it can be done. Jackson Hole has done this. It was a long process, but it's worth it. Thanks.
Thank you, Elise. Anybody else? All righty, so you have some direction moving forward.
Mayor, if I could, please.
Commissioner Thayer,
Yeah, I
yes.
think many of these are covered, yeah. So it sounds like you're going to come back to us with some recommendations. And this may have been asked already, so if I'm repeating it, I apologize, but talk to Delmarva Power, see if there are other options that they can use or that are available.
That's the plan. Thank you.
Mayor,
Commissioner
just a quick
Sanowski?
question for the city manager. We started replacing the light poles on Rehoboth Avenue in the past year, or maybe it's been 2. My understanding was that those would be dark sky compliant, correct?
No.
Oh, they're not.
But it's all in the head and the bulb, so we could make them dark sky compliant. But it would require a lot of work according to Henry. It would have to be all new.
I can just tell you, Commissioner Ternowski, is that you all, as a commission, made a resolution that all the city leagues should be dark sky compliant. The previous Public Works Director, before he left, ordered $350,000 worth of lights that are not dark sky compliant. Okay?
Thank you.
Mayor and Mr. Tedder, could we get an approximate price from Henry of how to retrofit that $350,000 worth of bulbs to, like, either with awnings? Like, would you explain to us what you would propose?
We'll have to do research on that.
Oh, so we don't know yet. Okay.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons I'm stressing the urgency of this. You know, let's prevent this from happening again, so we're not in a situation where we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to go in the wrong direction. You know, this could have been avoided if this was addressed. So now's the time. It really is. The issues are getting more dramatic by the day. You know, the more houses that are built, the more lights that are going in. This is due, and it's like I stressed, and as the city manager pointed out, that Dark Skies has, you know, sample ordinances. Other people have done this, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. This doesn't have to be a long, drawn-out process. We just pick a direction and do it, and we'll be very happy we did in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. So we've got, Taylor, you've got marching orders.
Henry, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Sure. So as you know, the median in Rehoboth Avenue, we have those fixtures. It was delayed about a year and a half or a year or so because of issues with the arms. The correct arms came in. It was the wrong arms initially. The city did not have to pay for that problem. That was by the manufacturer. And the plan is to have the new arms installed after 4th of July, in mid-September. There are 2 light fixtures. One is by Lockwood, that's a double arm, and another one in the circle. That would be on the northwest corner, which is the new style fixture. I have checked about the possibility of retrofitting, and that is not possible. A lot of it has to do with the type, with the globe, that it has to be more of a prism. And but for the phase 2, which will be in next year's CIP, which will be the sidewalk lights on Rehoboth Avenue, again, we received an $80,000 energy efficiency grant for that. And I have spoken with Frank and Jan about that recently, about definitely having that dark sky compliant.
Thank you, Henry. With that, we'll move on to commissioner announcements and comments. Does anybody have anything short? I will say that I married a young couple as related to the parking department employee last week on the beach. It was very satisfying. I get to do that as exercise my authority as a mayor. With that, review future meeting dates.
Oh,
Well,
Mayor, just a quick comment
yes,
here.
ma'am.
I had the privilege of ringing the bell just before 9:30 this past Saturday when potentially a squad of 80 lifeguards and beach ambassadors start the 10 o'clock shift, although as they work apparently they work, as you'd expect, 5 days per week. Not everyone was present, but it's a pretty substantial force. And the captain encourages any other commissioners, the mayor, I think, has already been there several times, to be the bell ringer Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. And we have Mr. Miller, a citizen, who plays the bugle. So it's a nice way to sort of send off the lifeguards for the day. And they, of course, they have done a terrific job. As we know, we have a really good safety record in this town.
Thank you, Suzanne. With that, review future meeting dates. Following this meeting, we have a special meeting. With that, we'll move on to citizen comment. This is for comments off topic. Walter?
Good morning, Walter Whittingham, 123 Henlopen Avenue. I'm just being helpful. The city's calendar says there's a meeting at noon time. I think that if this meeting had gotten over at 11 o'clock and people had left and come back at noon time, I just think we need a little detail.
Okay, thank you.
What I'd like to make comment is the next meeting, the special meeting, and I know you all have a lot to do, but to have item A, that we don't know how long it's going to last.
Walter, I'm going to make an announcement in a minute. We're going to change sequencing there to make it a little better.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further citizen comment? If not, then I call this meeting adjourned. Referencing the special meeting, the sequencing of items will be all the public business will be conducted first, and then we will go into executive session. That way it doesn't force everybody to sit around, stand around and everything. We need at least 15 minutes, so 15 to 20 minutes to reset the we're adjourned.